So you heard about the pirate he's like sitting around in a bar, and they get to kind of drinking some ale. Arr, 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 they're kind of telling stories the way they do. And this one guy, he's got a peg leg and a hook for a hand and a patch on his eye, and the other guys, they're drinking their ale, and he says, "Hey, how'd you get your peg leg?" And he says, "All right, well, I was up on the deck of me ship, and a cannonball came over the bow and blew my leg clean off. That's how I got my peg leg." Arr, 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 they're drinking their ale. How'd you get the hook on your hand? I was swashbuckling on me deck of me ship with a enemy pirate, and his sword to cut it clean off. That's how I got me hook. Arr, 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 He says, "Well, how'd you get the patch on your eye?" He says, "I was on the deck of me ship, and a seagull flew right over, and he pooped right in my eye." He says, "Well, how does that mean you get a patch on your eye?" He says, "That was the first day with me hook." Yeah. Arr, arr, arr. All right, so middle of the afternoon. So we go at a lot of things with about 1/2 eye on it. We need to be able to have full vision to see the gospel for what it is, instead of the way we maybe think it was supposed to be. To see the beauty of what Jesus is calling us to, that kind of life. And the ability to cast that vision and lead people toward it is a big task of preaching. That's really the focus of our next talk that David is going to bring to us. So Dave Stone, as much as anyone I know, has a lot of experience helping people move toward a full two-eyed vision. Let's welcome Dave Stone.
That was amazing the way you tried to tie that in. I commend you on your effort to tie that in. I will give you that. That's a great joke, by the way. I love that. Thank you all for letting me be here. Thanks for letting Aaron and Chris and for all the sponsors, and for you all to come in a little bit early and to take some time out of your schedule is really a sign that you are trying to step it up, whether you're in lay ministry, whether you are in paid ministry, whatever it might look like. I know this question was asked earlier. I just want to see for myself. How many of you all are on staff at a church? Would you put your hand up? Okay. How many of you all are? You weren't sure, right? Okay. Keith is. Well, I know. Yeah. That's why I don't have business cards. I know how this works. He's checking right now to see. I understand that feeling. Oh, that's all right. How many of you all are an elder, deacon, or a volunteer in the church? Okay. Keith is just extremely schizophrenic, is what we're finding out up here. He's confused. He's not exactly certain. I understand the question could fall into either category. So I've been in ministry for almost 30 years, which is scary to say out loud. But I have learned so much from so many mistakes that I have made. And I have made tons of mistakes. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in this next stretch is about vision casting. And when I think back to when I started in ministry, I'm not sure I even was acquainted with the term. I don't even think I knew all that it meant because it was so foreign to me. And I think I relied on other people to do that. And it's funny because Bob Russell used to always say to people, "Yeah, I'm a terrible vision caster." And I'm like, what? Because he really wasn't. He just went about it in a different way. He wasn't the type of person that was like a John Maxwell that was an incredible inspirational motivator. I heard John Maxwell speak one time. There were 400 preachers were at a conference, and I was sitting in the back of the room, and he started talking about a sermon series that he had done that had increased the giving. He said, this increased the giving within my church. He said, "Now, I'm not going to tell you that you need to listen to these sermons and preach them, but I can guarantee you that your offerings will go up 20% if you do." And I watched everybody's head go down, and they all wrote like this, and they all wrote down everything that he said, and they made certain that they got that. Well, that's not the style that Bob Russell is. Bob Russell would never say anything like that. And so I think Bob equated vision casting with the person that was constantly the rah-rah, and here's what we're going to do, here's the next mountain. But that's not what vision casting is, okay? Vision casting is all about taking what is a dream for the future and instead putting some feet on it so that you can get there one step at a time. Someone said a good leader is someone who can take you to a place that you would never go on your own. And I agree with that. Leadership is that ability to be able to stretch us to a point, to see a goal, to say, man, I think I can attain that with the help of some others. And that's the beauty of coming together for a conference like this. I was just talking to a couple who they don't have, I said, anybody else here from your church with you? They said, you know what, this is just our respite. This is just a chance for us to kind of come and to catch our breath and to be inspired. And isn't it fun when you're not in charge of the sound system? Isn't it fun when you don't have to worry about whether or not somebody is there to pass out bulletins? We have a conference at our church for Christian leaders, and it's in the middle of October every year. And on that night, we might have 2,000, 2,500 people in our sanctuary, and we are worshiping and singing. That night, the worship is better than it is any other time. And people always say to me from our church, why was the worship so incredible? I says, because you got all these hundreds, you have thousands of people who everything comes back to them, and they feel all that pressure and stress. And now they come here, and they don't have to worry about any of that stuff, and they can just worship the Lord in spirit and truth. And that's what happens when you come together for something like this. One of the greatest takeaways you'll have will be the fellowship times. Some of your greatest lessons will not be from Aaron or Chris or from me or from Brent or from Ben or anybody else. It will come from the conversations that you have over a meal, a hallway time where you put your hand on somebody's shoulder and you pray for them. You know, that's what will happen. I remember a few years ago I went to a conference at Rick Warren's church, and I'd never been there before at that time. And it was the Purpose-Driven Church was what the conference was. It was the first time that Rick had ever done it. And it went Monday through Friday, and it went 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And you talk about drinking from a fire hydrant. Okay? And I'm ADD. I mean, you snap your fingers, and I'm gone for the next 5 minutes. What? Who snapped? I mean, I can get pulled off sides incredibly easily. And on Thursday, I was dying. I had two ministry friends with me, Greg Bowman and John Turner. Some of y'all know some of those guys. And on Thursday, I said, I can't take it anymore. This is great stuff, but I've got to get out of here. And so Batman had just come out, the movie Batman. And I said, y'all want to go see Batman? Yes. They were, I mean, I was at Bat, and they were yes, all right? And so we blew off the late afternoon and the evening sessions. We went and watched Batman. And have you ever been in one of those moods? After the movie was over, we walked next door to the theater, and there was a pizza place. You ever been in one of those moods where you just can't stop laughing? You just get so tickled. You know, everything is hilarious, and you're just dying laughing with tears coming in. Typically, it hits you during communion time or at a funeral, all right? Okay? That's when it hits me anyway. So we go in the back of this pizza place. There's a guy standing back behind the counter. Well, we can't stop laughing about something. I have no idea what we were laughing about. We laughed for about 5 minutes. Finally, we all three walk up, and I said, okay. I said, I'm so sorry. I said, we're ready to order. He said, don't say anything. He said, I've owned this place for several years. He said, I'm pretty good at this. I said, you're pretty good at what? He said, I'm pretty good at sizing people up and guessing what it is that they're going to order. Well, we started cackling all the harder, as you can imagine, you know. So finally I said, hit me with your best shot. And he said, you want a large pepperoni pizza and a pitcher of beer. And I said, no, sir. I said, you guys all wrong. I said, we're all three ministers, and we can't stand pepperoni. He just kind of looked at me like, oh, all right. Some of you know Steve Reeves. He preaches outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. He tells a story several years ago, a woman that he knew of who had a delicate operation, and it was on the horizon, and the surgeon had talked to her, and it was going to be on her brain, and they were going to remove a tumor. And the doctors were very concerned because the slightest miscue during surgery could cause either the loss of her memory or it could cause the loss of her eyesight. And so the doctor tried to explain the technical nature and the delicate nature of this operation and said, I really am asking you so that I will know which side to concentrate on more. And if there were a problem, he said, if you had to lose one, I'm not saying that you will lose either one of these, but if you had to lose one, which would you be more apt or willing to lose? Would it be your eyesight or your memory? And she said, let me think about it. And she was wise. And she prayed about it, and the next day when she talked to the doctor, she said, I made my decision, and said, well, okay, what is it? She said, if I had to lose one, I would prefer to lose my memory. And he said, okay, well, that lets me know which side to concentrate on. And then he said, if you don't mind me asking, how did you arrive at that? And this is what she said. She said, because I would rather see where I'm going than remember where I've been. And that's at the heart of a vision for a church. Doesn't mean you forget the past. Don't misunderstand me. It does mean that you focus on the future. Remember years ago when Mark McGuire hit his 70th home run in the middle of a season for his St. Louis Cardinals? Later came out he was on steroids and all that, but that was a magical night if you're a sports fan. And when he hit the home run, here's the scene that unfolded. As he rounded third and as he came across home plate, his son was at home plate waiting for him. His father, Mark McGuire's father, had already passed away. And as he touched home plate, he pointed to his father and he picked up his son and held him up. And you have both things taking place in the same moment. It was looking back and it was looking forward. And that's what our job is as church leaders, is to say, how can I help us not rely on a glorious heritage and a glorious past? How can I help us look to a bright future? And if you had a bad past, how can we get that behind us and how can we move on from there? Christ had a great vision that he cast for the church, and he did it in a rather unusual setting. You're familiar with the account in Matthew chapter 16. It's about as far north as Jesus ever took his disciples. And he took them to a place called Caesarea Philippi. And it's tough to describe what it would be like. It would be like Hollywood, New York City, and Las Vegas all rolled into one. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that it was just this cadre of incredible idol worship. You talk about multiculturalism. It was on steroids in that setting. And as Jesus is teaching his disciples, and as he's seated there, and as they're seated around him, imagine them being in a circle. Every direction that they look in the background of Jesus, every direction they look, there is an idol. There's a statue. How many of you all have ever been to Caesarea Philippi? There have been a few of you? And you saw the niches that are there. You can still see where there are inscriptions to false gods and foreign gods, and they would sit in these niches, and there would be a statue there. So Jesus is surrounded by all these dead gods all around him, and it's in that setting of the Hollywood, Las Vegas, New York City that Jesus casually says to them, who do people say that I am? They say, well, some say Elijah, some say Jeremiah, some say one of the other prophets. And then Jesus takes it from the general question, he brings it to the personal question. He says, who do you say that I am? There's a pause. And Simon Peter answers without fear or speculation. He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, well, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven revealed it to you. And I tell you that on this rock, you will be called Peter. He says that. He changes his name from Simon to Peter, which means rock. Okay? He says, upon this rock, the statement that Jesus is God's living son, not on Peter, but he says, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. It is impossible for us to have a prevailing church if it is not built on the foundation of Jesus Christ. And if we don't have that as part of our vision, if Jesus is not at the cornerstone of that, then all other ground is sinking sand. Okay? I mean, there is no way There is no way that it can stand. Now, did you notice Peter's wording? In that setting, in that place, with that background, he says, you are the Christ, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. What a distinction to make, and what a place. Peter realized we're surrounded by a whole lot of dead gods, but that's not where you come from. You are the Son of the living God. So how do we have prevailing churches? How do we cast the vision and move our congregation toward a vision? How do we even decide on it? In the story of Alice in Wonderland, I love it. There's that point where Alice comes to a fork in the road, and she just kind of looks down one direction, looks down the other, and she just kind of, is bewildered. Well, the Cheshire Cat is seated right there. And the cat says, what's going on? And she says, well, I don't know which road to take. And he says, well, where is it you want to get to? And she says, I'm not really sure. And the cat says something quite profound. He says, if you don't know where you're going, then one road is just as good as the next. So the question for you today is, where do you want your church to go? I mean, if I sat down next to you and we had 5 minutes and I just said, so tell me about your church. What's your mission, your vision? What are your strategies? What are you all about? If somebody asked, what's First Christian about? What would you answer? What's your vision? What's that mission that you have? This became rather popular about 20 years ago. We took it from the secular world when we started saying, we need to have a mission for our church. We need to have a mission for our church. Well, that's good. We do need to have a mission for our church. We need to all be on the same page as congregations saying, this is what route we're going to go. So what I'd like to talk about for a few minutes is, I'm going to skip through several things and dig right to the vision piece. And I want to talk about how you put that vision together and how it is that you can help your congregation land on what is a healthy vision. I think it's important, if you're taking notes, that we start with the mission piece. Mission is more general, okay? Mission is what you do. A vision is who you are. And I'm not trying to split hairs and get real analytical with you, but a mission is what you do. It's more general. A vision is more specific. Mission relates to ministry objectives, while vision deals with a ministry's direction or a ministry's uniqueness. There may be 5 or 10 churches in your area that all have the exact same mission that you do. That's great. There will only be one that has your mission, and that's you. That has your vision. You'll be the only person that has that vision. The vision is very specific. It ties in with exactly where you want the Lord to take your church. And it's not arrived at in quick fashion. Believe me, it is a painstaking process. The mission that we came up with for our church is this. When people say, well, what's Southeast Christian about? People say all the time, what's that church all about there? Well, you know what Southeast is all about? It's about connecting people to Jesus and one another. And that's it. We want to connect people to Jesus and one another. Okay? Now, we are very upfront. We think the word connection shows that there is a relationship that's there. We think the word Jesus was important. We looked at God and different phrases there when we tried to come up with this. And we finally decided, you know what? God means so many different things to different people these days. Let's really be bold and let's really let people know. We think that salvation is found in no one else, as Acts 4:12 says, but the name of Jesus. So that's what the Lord led us to. He may not have led your church to that, but that's how we ended up with connecting people to Jesus and to one another. Why to one another? Because if we just connect them to Jesus, then we're back to what Aaron talked about, the loneliness factor. Now it's just some ethereal relationship that they have with some deity, and it has no flesh to it because there's no one living Christianity out beside them. Okay? The other thing is, our experience has been there are some people who will come to love the people in the church or love some friends before they come to love Jesus. That's almost a direct quote from Roberta Cooney, who wrote a book called Seize the Moment, and she said, I have come to discover that people will oftentimes come to love me before they come to love my Savior. Does that make sense? you know? And so we say that's what we're about. That is what our mission is. Now, if you ministered in the Louisville area, you might say, you know what, that's our mission too. Connect people to Jesus and one another. Connect people to Jesus and one another. Well, so now we have to extrapolate a little bit more. After you come up with your mission of what you do, now you have to say, who are you? Who are you going to be as a church? And the elders help take the lead on this. The staff members help to take the lead on this. And you are trying to help guide your church. You're not looking for suggestions. This is not a thing where you're asking other people and say, boy, we really want your input. You're going to get 30 different, you know what we need to be? We need to be about prayer. Oh, no, we need to be against abortion. Okay, no, we need to be for the families. What about the orphans? I mean, that's the great, James 1:27. What are we doing for the widows? What are we doing? And all of a sudden, you're going to have the question is, where is God leading your church? Where is God leading your leadership? And you'd be very bold and say, we're going to pray about this, and we're going to ask God to put us all on the same page. That's how you find out what God's vision is for your church. It's not you go to a cool retreat and you sit down, you watch the leaves change 2 days, and you come back and say, this is what our mission is going to be, and this is what our vision is going to be. It's a collaborative effort of asking God to sharpen, to whittle. We came back from a 3-day retreat. We said we've got our vision statement to our elders, and we shared it with them. And we had worked for 3 days. We had fasted. We had done all sorts of things prior to the retreat, and we came up with this vision, and we shared it with our elders. And they said, "Boy, we really like that. That's really good. Let's just let it percolate. Let's just let it simmer for a while." Oh, to a personality like mine, that is like, I mean, I had the attention span of a fruit fly. I'm like, I'm ready to tell the staff tomorrow. We got an all-staff meeting tomorrow. We just thought we'd tell you guys, and it'd be great timing for me to tell them tomorrow. Well, you know what, Dave? We really like it. Let's just continue to simmer on it, and let's just pray about it. And that's what we did for another 5 months. And when we got our finished product, it probably had 3 words changed, and that was it. But we all were involved in it. We all agreed with it. And the buy-in is more important than anything else. I remember years ago when handwriting was on the wall, we needed to build a new building. This is back around 19 years ago. We had outgrown our facility. We had a building that seated 2,400, and we were in 4 services, about to go to 5 services. And so Bob Russell makes a proposal to the elders and said, hey, all the staff, we've been talking, we need to build a new building. We need to build a new building. And all the elders said, you know what, this is crazy. We've only been in this building for 2.5 years, and we can come up with some other ways. We're going to add this 5th service, that's going to help. And, I think you guys need to slow down and don't cry wolf. And we all walked away, and the staff and Bob, we were all like, oh, man, this is terrible. But Bob Russell was so wise. He said, you know what? Let's just keep praying, and let's see what happens. Well, the chairman of the elders appointed a long-term planning committee. They started meeting of elders for several months. After the 3rd month, they came back and said, you know what? We don't think this is a long-term planning committee. This is a short-term crisis committee. We have got to build another building. And all the elders said, that's exactly right. We sure do. Why didn't somebody tell us that? So we're dying. But what happened was, do you see what happened? They had to take ownership of it. They had to get involved in it. Had we have done it 3 months before, because we felt like the timing was right and we felt like it was so obvious, it would have been the staff's idea. It was so much better when it was the elders and the staff's idea than when it was just a staff idea. And that's all key to casting a vision. Long story short, our vision that we have, remember, a mission is what you do. A vision is who you are. A mission is what 5 or 10 churches in your area might have. They all might share the same one as you. A vision is, this is what we do. This is who we are. And our vision for Southeast Christian is to be a praying church who reaches out and challenges everyone to follow Jesus completely. To be a praying church. We put it right in our first phrase because in the last 3 or 4 years, what God has just been beating us silly over is to have a greater dependence on Him. And so everything comes back to prayer. And we try to draw a distinction between, it's one thing to be a church who prays, it's another thing to be a praying church. You might say, well, you're really splitting hairs or playing semantics there. We just really feel like prayer has got to be our default mechanism. And everything has got to come back to prayer. And so when there is a staff decision, when there is a building decision, whatever it might be, we're going to try to bathe it in prayer. And it takes a lot of different forms in the last couple of years. And we've started, our chairman of the elders came to me 2 years and 2 months ago and said, hey, Dave, he said, with this new prayer initiative, you know what I thought? What if, we only meet together as elders 11 times a year, every Tuesday night, second Tuesday of the month. What if we started praying together every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock? And I said, what time? And he said, 7 o'clock. Well, I'm not a morning person, and I'm like, wow, that's a really neat idea, Brad. That's really great. Let's talk about that some. We talked about it some, and I said, you know what? I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we do it once a month? Huh? Once a month every Tuesday morning at 7. And when we do it once a month, then we coupled with our elders meeting, we will be meeting together twice as often as any eldership has ever met in 48 years of our church. Huh? How about them apples? And Brad didn't say anything for a minute, and he said, no, let's do it once a week. And I said, okay. So he won. Chairman of the elders won. But that was 2 years and 2 months ago. And I would tell you now, I won. Because our eldership is closer than it's ever been. We have a greater respect for one another. We have a deeper understanding of the hurts and the pains that they're facing in their family, the struggles that they are going through personally. And as a result of it, every Tuesday morning from 7 o'clock to 8:15, we are praying for our church. We are praying for one another. We are praying for the needs that are taking place. And prayer has been raised up to here when it was about right here. We just decided to open a new campus, and so we announced it to our church this summer, and it's in a different type of area than we've ever gone before. It's in a poor area. It's in a very densely populated area. 200,000 people within 7 miles of where we're going to build our next campus. And there is a spiritual hunger. There is one church that runs over 1,000 within a 15-minute drive of that location. And so 2 weeks ago on Monday, we took our staff out on some buses, and we just sat on the buses there, and we just prayed for what God's going to do there. And then we all split up in different bus loads, and we said, let's go to different restaurants, let's go walk different neighborhoods, and let's just walk and pray as we walk through all these neighborhoods. And we split up and went every which way, every staff person. And we prayed for God incidences just to happen, and just for Him just to go ahead of us. And the stories that they came back with were just unbelievable, of people who had heard the church was coming there, or wanted to find out more about it, or people that they got to pray with, or people that they got to bless in restaurants. And I was in a restaurant and struck up a conversation with an African-American family that was there, and just couldn't get this 6-year-old boy to talk to me. And it just being a former youth minister, it just kills you if you can't get a kid to talk to you. I could get his mom and what turned out to be a social worker, another lady with them, and their 13-year-old daughter to talk to me. I just couldn't get this 6-year-old kid to talk to me for anything. And I tried everything. So finally, after they got their food and I got my food, I was going to go sit with some folks from church. I already had my stuff down with them. And I went over to this family. I said, would you guys mind if I ate lunch with you guys today? Well, if you want to, come on over. So I said, I think I'd like to get to know you guys some. And so I got to spend the next hour with them and make a friendship with them. And she didn't know what, she got talking about big churches and ripping on big churches, and she didn't know who was sitting at the table with her. And the social worker, after a short while, said, you look so familiar. Why do you look familiar to me? So I don't know. Are you in a prison ministry? I didn't know what to say. And she had not visited me there. So turns out she had, I think, seen a television broadcast of our church one time. And that was a connection she made. And the other gal said, well, you know what? I'm so turned off from churches, I will be in a club early in the morning, and I'll visit another church the next morning, and the guy who was sitting at the table next to me getting drunk is the guy who was preaching in that church. And she said, so why would I want to go to a church? And it just blew me away. And I said, well, I wouldn't want to go to a church if that's what it was like either. I said, boy, I would have a bad taste in my mouth about that as well. But this kid got involved in the conversation, and he started looking through my iPhone, looking at pictures, and he got real excited about pictures, and we got talking about sports. And the mom said, yeah, he's a bedwetter. He's a bedwetter. And I'm like, did she just say that? Yeah, he wets his bed. 6 years old, and he wets his bed. And the social worker looked at her, and she said, well, they say to try some different methods, that if we embarrass him some, maybe that'll get him to stop because nothing else is working. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. And so I exchanged cell phone numbers with all of them. And I said to Isaiah, the 6-year-old boy, I said, at the end of the meal, I said, I really would like for you to come to the church where I go to sometime. And he said, can I go today? And I said, well, you can't go today. But I said, there'll be a time. I said, now your mom's not going to want to come because it's big. And she said, it's not bigger. Than she named a church in town that she'd been to. And I said, well, I hate to tell you, but it's big. It's bigger than that one. No way. I said, well, I think it is, yeah. And then she said, do you have an ATM machine at your church? I said, no. And she said, then I'll come. I said, okay, I'll hold you to that. And we've been in touch all week, but when I left, she said this to me. She said, you know what? I have never seen Isaiah take to a man like he's taken to you. I've never seen him laugh like that, and I've never seen him talk to a man like he's talked to you. And she said, you know what? I wish you could mentor my son. I don't know what's going to happen there. I've made 4 touches with him this week by phone and by text. And she sent me a text yesterday and said, Isaiah's having some behavior problems at school. And I called and left her a message and said, how can I help? And I'm going out of town, but I want to get together with him. And I share that story with you because those things don't happen if you're not bathing something in prayer. They just don't happen. My experience has been when I pray, coincidences happen. When I don't pray, coincidences don't happen. Heidi Quaid said, miracles or coincidences are small miracles in which God chooses to remain anonymous. Okay? And so what we have to do is we need to pray and say, Lord, clear the landscape, make it possible, move in people's hearts, bring these divine appointments in front of us, help us to have the guts and the courage to go for it so that somehow we can help that person become a completely committed follower of Jesus Christ. Let me give you 5 steps of any vision, and then I'll wrap up because I haven't looked at a watch and I have no idea. But if you're looking at vision and you want to say, I want to come up with a mission for our church of what we're going to do, I want to come up with a vision for who we're going to be. Here are 5 observations. Some of these are from George Barna, and others of them are from myself, I think. But number 1, the vision should be biblical. The vision should be biblical. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All Scripture is God-breathed. It is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the man of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. So if it's not rooted and based on the truth of Scripture, then to me, it's probably not the right vision for your church. Okay? This is not a club. This is not an organization you're putting together. Okay? This is a church that you're trying to build. And if we really believe the gates of Hades will not prevail against it, then that means that we want to have a biblical vision. You know, if I'm ever up a creek in a sermon and I don't have enough good stuff in it, I'm going to look back over that thing and see how much Scripture I have in it. That's where the power is in the thus saith the Lord. I'm going to make certain that I get that in there. I'm going to make certain that it is a biblical sermon. Here's a second piece of a vision. The vision should be memorable. The vision should be memorable. You shouldn't have to struggle to recite it or remember it. Can I tell you what our old mission was? Southeast Christian Church exists to evangelize the lost, to edify the saved, to minister to those in need, and to be a conscience in the community. Oh, it just rolls off your lips, doesn't it? You know? Could you say that back to me in words like evangelize and edify and all these different components to it? Well, those are more like strategies than they are a mission. And so when people say, well, what's Southeast about? I want to say it's about connecting people to Jesus and one another. Anybody can remember that. Connecting people to Jesus and one another. So make certain whatever you come up with, it's got to be memorable. People have got to be able to understand this is the DNA of that congregation. If they were to be cut, that's what they would bleed. Number 3, the vision should come from God. And I don't mean that to sound mystical or confusing. If I was talking to Chris's friends in New York City, I would try to qualify that in a few ways. Well, you know, I mean, I don't mean I audibly hear him saying this to me. I mean, I have to explain it. But you all understand what I mean. It's got to come from God. I am crazy enough to believe that God can transfer His vision for your church into your heart, and that He can do the exact same thing to all the leadership within your church. I just think He can do that. We just need to boldly ask for that and say, Lord, get us all on the same page. Make this really crystal clear. Number 4, the vision must be shared with others. The vision must be shared with others. This is not something you keep to yourself. It's not something that's relegated to the minutes of some board meeting or you jot it in your journal and never do anything with it. You can't keep this quiet. If you can call it what you want, but it's not a vision, all right? It's a statement. It's a point. But it's got to somehow find a way in your life to where you can't help but tell people about it. If something incredible happens at a worship service at your church, you don't have to, at the end of the service, say, hey, and by the way, you know what? I've got a request to make of you all. Would you all share that? What happened this morning? Will you all tell somebody about that? No, you don't have to do that. Because they want to do it. How many of you all have ever been to New York City? Put your hands up. Okay? 2/3, 80% of you all in here. My son and I, we went to the All-Star game in Pittsburgh in 2006. Where's my Pittsburgh people in here? Okay. 2006, I think, is when it was. And I took my son there, and we watched Home Run Derby, and we watched the All-Star game. And it was very exciting. But he was a little guy, and he wanted to be out there where the home runs were being hit. And we had been told it gets really rough out there. You don't want to be out there, especially with a kid. Well, you know what we did? We saw that it was coming to Yankee Stadium in the last year of Yankee Stadium. This is back a few years ago. And so we started saving money for a trip. I'd taken each one of my daughters to New York City when they were around 13 years of age. And Sam was around 13. And I said, dude, we are saving. We are going to be in New York City when you're 13 years old. We're going to watch the Home Run Derby and the All-Star Game. And so we saved and saved. We got freaking flyer tickets. Somebody got us squared away at a hotel and got us a discounted rate at this hotel in downtown New York City. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then it came time to show them the tickets. And I said, buddy, there's a lot of left-handed hitters this year. We got seats in the right field bleachers of Yankee Stadium. This is great. This is great. We went walking in there. And I said to him before we went in, I said, Sam, I want to pull you aside. And I said, I want to make certain that you understand before we go in there what you are about to walk into. Because I said, it's going to be different than anything that you have ever been a part of. This is not Louisville, Kentucky anymore. I understand. He had gotten his first initiation when we had watched the parade through downtown Times Square. And the New York fans shouted obscenities at John Papelbaum's wife, who was pregnant, and they chanted cuss words at her, and that was when he got his indoctrination into, it was a little different world than Kansas or Kentucky. So I said, before we go in, I said, I just want to ask you one question. I said, are you man enough to be in here? He said, I'm man enough. I said, let me ask you this. I said, do you want to try your hardest to get a baseball? He said, I do. I said, everybody in here wants a baseball. You understand, everybody in the right field bleachers, they are willing to do anything to get a baseball. Are you willing to do anything in order to get a ball? Oh, I'm in. I said, you might get a bloody nose. You might get a bruise. You might get a black eye. Are you in? He said, Dad, I'm in. We went in there. No sooner had we sat down, two college athletes seated behind us said, just want you boys to know, if anything comes close here, we're going through you guys to get it. I looked back and tried to get the toughest look I could, and I said, well, that's good to know. I said, because we're going to go through you if one goes over our heads. And I was going, oh, Lord. Well, the home runs started flying. The cuss words were flying right and left. I mean, I have never heard, I still have never used cuss words used the way they used them, you know? And I mean, my son is looking at me like this. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing. You know, I never knew that was a verb, but you know, hey. So it was unbelievable. But then out of the blue, Grady Sizemore is at the plate. He crushes a home run. I can see it coming closer. I can see it coming closer. I can see the seams. 12 gloves leap into the air at the exact same point. I leapt over a row, and we all landed, and I can hear my son going, yes, 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 because he saw something no one else could see. When I got up off of the ground, I didn't even know I had it, but I had the ball in my glove, and I'm going, I got it, I got it. My section's going crazy. Yes, 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 this is great. The guy in front of me says, man, he said, I thought I had it. And then all of a sudden, I got hit from behind by something. I said, that would be me. And then I look, and my son said, Dad, look. And all these beers and Cokes, I had knocked them over, and they had spilled all over the belongings of all these people. And I'm trying to apologize, but everybody was really cool about it. But can I tell you what happened for the next hour and a half? Everybody said the same thing. Hey, could I see the ball? Could we get a picture with the ball? You can hold it. You can still hold it, but can we get a picture with it? I said, oh, no, you can have it. And I'd take this thing out, and it actually says on it, Home Run Derby. That's the only balls they use in it, and it says a year on it. And so they start passing it around, and everybody's like, you sure this is okay? I mean, it's like the Holy Grail. It's like, you know. But everybody had been so consumed with it, and they're all passing it around, okay? And they're getting pictures taken with it, and they're holding it up right next to their face. The two college athletes behind said, you mind if we get a picture? I said, no, man, go right ahead and take it. They're getting their picture with it. My son, I didn't tell you this, in batting practice, he got a David Ortiz home run ball in batting practice. So we both walk away with a baseball. Okay? Now, does somebody have to tell us to tell that story to anybody in the next week? No way. We can't keep that quiet. We all came in with the exact same vision. A bunch of us got that vision fulfilled because that was the night that Josh Hamilton went nuts. Okay? And here we are sitting in Yankee Stadium, and he shares over the loudspeaker about his love for Jesus Christ with Aaron Andrews interviewing him. And I go back, we get back at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I said to Sam, I said, "Are you still awake?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I can't sleep." I said, "I'm just sitting here thinking, wouldn't it be cool if sometime you came back here when you were older and you could get people in New York City just as excited about Jesus Christ as they are about baseball?" And he said, "Yeah." You see, what happens is when you have a vision and everybody's in on the play, you don't have to pull teeth. They all share it. The vision must be shared with others, or else it's not the vision. Here's the last thing. The vision should be repeated and repeated and repeated. When I took the helm at Southeast, I went to two of our most respected leaders, business leaders in our church, and we have a number of them, but these two guys were head and shoulders above the rest. And apart from each other, and in different settings and in different time periods, I said to them, I said, "What's the greatest bit of advice that you could give me coming into this role?" Both of them said the exact same thing to me. Keep repeating the vision. When you think they've got it, repeat it some more. When you think they're sick of it, keep saying it. And it will be music to your ears when you hear them saying it to you. And that's exactly what's happened. Now when I hear people say, "You know what? We are connecting people to Jesus and one another. That's what we're about." It's like music to my ears. When I hear somebody say, "You know what our vision is? Our vision is to be a praying church." When I hear somebody in the baptistry, before they baptize someone, saying, "You know what our goal is here? Our vision specifically for our church is to be a praying church who reaches out and helps everyone follow Jesus completely. And look at the step that you're taking today in obedience to Jesus Christ." You know, so the challenge to all of us would be to make certain that that mission that we have for our church of what we do and the vision of who we are, that somehow we embody it. I talked earlier about that consistency piece, and that's the prayer, that's our challenge. So let me pray for that, and then we'll panelize this, all right? Lord, I feel I've rambled, but if we get anything out of this, Lord, I pray that it is a heightened awareness that we need to know at the fork in the road which road to take. And we are the ones who are to help plot the steps and give the directions. So, Lord, may we be following your GPS and not anyone else's. And may we be in lock, stock, and barrel on the route that you have us on. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.